So season 36 of Master Duel is over today, and I think people generally have a good idea of what the meta decks are, and I also think that most people generally aren't a big fan of these meta decks. So I thought to welcome in the first season of 2025, why don't we go over what I believe are some of the best rogue decks this format for, you know, people who aren't fans of the meta right now. And I know whenever the term rogue is brought up in Yu-Gi-Oh, there's always debate about what actually is a rogue deck, because we as a community don't have a strict definition of what a rogue deck actually is. So to make it more clear, I'll go over some parameters. One is by usage. This is the untapped GD's data on all the games played in Diamond and Master last season. And these are the 11 most played decks on the ladder last season. And, you know, generally, a rogue deck is not going to be played implies it's not played as much as the meta decks. So the rogue decks I'm choosing from aren't going to come from this pool of 11 decks right here. And also, you know, based on a rough power ranking, you know, for example, here's the Master Duel meta tier list, and rogue, by just definition of the word, a rogue deck is not a tiered deck, so it's probably not going to come from from a tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 established tier list. And also, we just had a Duelist Cup, a very competitive event, and this pie chart represents the top 100 placements in the Duelist Cup. And if a deck is listed here, it means that it's gotten multiple tops it got multiple tops from the last Duelist Cup. So rogue decks will generally be taken from this pool of others, and not the decks that actually performed the best during the Duelist Cup. So, and with that stuff out of the way, let's get to the first deck. So the first deck we're going to go over is a deck that I'm just constantly shocked at how little it's played, and what I believe is consistently one of the most underrated decks in the game, and it's Purrely. Like, to give you a sense of just how little Purrely is played, Untapped GG literally does not pick up Purrely as a deck that people played on ladder. That's right. This deck has like a 0% play rate last season for somehow. I do not remember the last time I played against Purrely. And like I don't quite understand why this deck sees so little play, other than the fact that I guess it's hard and people don't like Purrely. But this deck is always a scary deck to play against, in my opinion, because an unaffected Noir that also drew you, 4 to 6 cards during your standby phase is never not going to be scary. Purrely's main game plan, I believe, it's just always going to be good as long as Master Duel exists. Since, unaffected Noir with multiple spins, that goes without saying, but also drawing 4 to 6 cards in a format where Maxi is legal, so you're going to draw into Maxi, and then you're going to fire off Maxi, and then you're going to draw into more hand traps during they're going to draw more hand traps during your turn while you're trying to play into an unaffected Noir. Like, that's never not going to be good in Master Duel. Even in this format, I think this deck has a fine matchup versus Tenpai, at least compared to a lot of other rogue decks that see more play than this deck. Dealing with unaffected Noir for Tenpai can sometimes be a struggle, because this can just spin all your stuff away. You can spin Kaibans and stuff. This deck plays a lot of non-engine, and also this deck, because there's level 1s, this deck makes this card called Fucho. So automatically, going turn 1, Noir plus Fucho, that's like a near auto win against Tenpai, which is the most played deck in format. I don't like this deck's Tenpai matchup is relatively fine. I think it may even be good. And this deck's it's a deck that's in a Maxi format. This deck doesn't care about Maxi at all, which is that's such a positive. And this deck has lots of room for non-engine too. It's consistent still, even with all the hits. Again, you still have upwards of 18, 19 starters or whatever. And yeah, I'm not sure. This deck should be seeing way more play than 0%. I'll say that. Like, to go over the deck list, since I guess it's been a while since a lot of people have seen a Purrely deck, the Purrely ratios have always been just maxed out on however many copies of the Purrely cards are legal. For some reason, both cats are still at 2, even though apparently Purrely sees no play, so I don't see why these cards are still on the limited list, but, Konami be Konamiing. But yeah, 2 white, 2 black, 3 street, 3 my friend, 3 happy, 3 pretty, 1 delicious. Also, Surprise is still limited as well. Could be at least at 2 like in other formats. And then 3 Sleepy Memory, the actual broken one, because this is the one that lets you draw multiple cards during your opponent's standby phase and draw into more non-engine. 2 Eep. 2 because that way, if you hard draw it, then you can just discard the Eep and it's fine. And then you need to always use one to recycle, because you only have a limited number of cats, so the first one is generally going to be used to put back the cats back into your deck so that you can play on turn 3, and then it helps having a second one just to seal the game. And then my personal tech is, this is probably not standard, although, I mean, nobody's playing Purrely, so there is no standard Purrely deck list as of right now, but we got 3 copies of the Black Gold Labs, aka Michael Jordan, because this is what I think is probably the best discard engine. These aren't bricks when you draw them, but and obviously they have benefits in the grave, so they're easy discards. They help. This helps break a board as well, because you just activate you resolve your memories, you discard Black Gold, and then you start calling names on your opponent's board. And then this deck is a decent at going second. You know, it's not the greatest, but it has game. It has tons of extenders, just because every quick play spell is basically an extender. And then when you combine that with Black Golds, turning off the biggest threats on your opponent's field, and then you can spread into OTK, and then anytime you can resolve multiple happiness attacks into your opponent's board, I mean, you basically just win the game. If not, outright OTK them. I mean, you're going to accumulate so much advantage and end on like a Noir that has like 5-7 plus materials, so I mean, you're going to win from there anyways. And you know, Street, target protection, it's, you know, protects from imperms, protects from Veilers. There's a lot of hand traps flying around, so it's good against that. And yeah, speaking of, you know, we have this deck is a deck that has tons of room for non-in, so you also have the Veilers, the Imperm, the Maxi, which are like the 3 best hand traps, and then Veilers as well, and then like a Crow and a Ghost Ogre. These can be whatever hand traps you want. Crow right now is somewhat used as a cross-out target, because Crow is like one of the hand traps that hurts the most, because on your Purrely, if you go Purrely, call Sleepy Memory, and then your opponent crows the Sleepy Memory, you don't get the Exceed, so that kind of hurts a lot. So you know, you can use you can also run Bell as anti-Crow as well, but the only deck that really plays Crow right now is Tenpai, so we'll see how relevant that is. And then, you know, Ogre, if you don't have Sleepy Memory, or if you don't have Happy Memory to protect from Ogre, then yeah, Ogre does also hurt. It hits like anything. It hits your My Friend Purrely, or it hits your Cat's Exceed effect, so that they don't resolve, and then they just get destroyed, and then you don't get the float off the street or the My Friend, because you never got to the Exceed in the first place. But yeah, and then, you know, Crow and Ogre are just generally decent hand traps right now. Crow is and Ogre are both good against Tenpai, and so on and so forth. The extra deck, we have 2 of each of the cats besides Plump. Only 1 Plump, or we have 2 Happiness, 2 Beauty, because you know, Happy and Pretty Memory are at 3, so you do go through these, and then these are very good for breaking boards as well. Only 1 Plump and 1 Noir. Plump because its Delicious Memory is limited, so like how often are you really going to get a chance to go into Plump anyways? And Noir is something you do use turn 1, and then you never really need to go to Noir after that, because you have a battle phase after turn 1, and then anytime you have a battle phase, it's just, Purrely Happiness is just better than Noir if you can resolve it. 2 X-Purrely Noirs, and then you have Fucho, the anti-Tenpai card. You have Downer Magician to make a big Zeus. You have Typhon because you have the room, and then Anima, Azalea plus SP Little Knight. SP and Anima are pretty self-explanatory. Azalea, because your cats are light and dark, you can do the play of, you know, go into Azalea, pop a card, go to SP, pop another card. So if you're like under something like a D barrier, which does see play this format, you can still pop and get rid of multiple cards on the board under D barrier. So it's still nice. And yeah, Purrely is, man. If you own this deck, try playing this deck. I'm sure you'll be pleasantly surprised by how effective this deck actually is. Oh, and I guess another point I forgot to bring up is that people simply aren't playing Alice de Noir. Like, Towers like cards aren't extremely common in this format, so stuff like Kaijus aren't incredibly common even in Tenpai. God knows people aren't playing Herald of the Abyss, like this card. Remember this card? Herald of the Abyss plus Thrust to out the Noir. Like this card is not seen in play. Like generally, if you get the stick of Noir, a lot of people only outs are they might play Goddess, but not every deck even plays Goddess. And then the next closest thing to like an out to Noir is Forbidden Droplets, which only works if you get the Noir under 5 materials. So if you have like a 6 or 7 material Noir, you still get to be unaffected, and you get to spin the cards while playing around for droplets too. So yeah, this card, people aren't prepared for this deck. I'll just say that. So next is a deck that I've come around on recently, and it's what I believe is the best version of Spright, which is Tri-Brigade Spright. And I know some people might take exception into calling this deck quote-unquote Tri-Brigade Spright, because there's literally only 3 Tri-Brigade monsters in the main deck, and this deck doesn't even run Shirag or Revolt. You know, the typical staple cards and Tri-Brigade builds. And yeah, this deck basically just uses the Tri-Brigade cards as free link material and free link 2s, which basically amounts to having a double Dragon Lord on top of your end board. So this ain't your daddy's old Tri-Brigade deck. No, this is just mainly a Spright deck that uses Tri-Brigades as a supplemental engine, but the main focus is on the Spright cards instead. But yeah, with that out of the way, this deck also barely sees any play on the ladder, but it topped another Duelist Cup. You know, this deck, for some reason, this deck, you'll barely ever run into this on the ladder. I don't think I've ever run into this on the ladder, but it always tops every Duelist Cup. There's always at least one placing where there's like a Tri-Brigade Spright in the top 100 of Duelist Cup. And it's because this deck's actually pretty decent, and you know, it has a dedicated player base and all. But yeah, this deck, its end boards are really scary. This has, out of all the Spright variants, this has the scariest end board because of the addition of the Tri-Brigade engine. As you mentioned, you have the double Dragon Lord, but you have all of the Spright staples as well. You know, you have the Elf giving targeting protection to the IP Masquerena. You have a Pit Knight early as a negate. You know, you have now you have access to this card called Scylla Hat Rabbit. Not every deck even runs this, but you know, some Tri-Brigade builds do run this, and if you do make this, you also get Azarun, Statue of Azarun, which is like a Solemn Warning on top of your end board, so you have like 5+ interruptions on your end board. Not to mention, this is a deck that runs tons of non-engine. I believe we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This deck has 15 hand traps in it, so obviously you're gonna probably have a couple hand traps on top of your end board. And yeah, the cool thing about Scylla Hat Rabbit is that this card can be used as link material the turn you set a trap card. But as we all know in Spright, Gigantic Spright doesn't give a shit about cards that can't be used as link material. So in fact, if you want, you can in fact exceed a Spright Sprint and a Scylla Hat Rabbit, both cards that cannot be used as link material, and then overlay them into a Gigantic Spright, and then continue comboing from there. While these cards, you get them off the field. So it's like, wow, who would have thought Gigantic Spright? What a card, right? But yeah, also another strength of Spright, specifically with this build, is that like it's really hard to hand trap this deck. It's insanely hard to hand trap this deck in a format where Tenpai is running around and with lots of decks are just running tons of hand traps. You have to be able to play through hand traps, and this deck certainly does. Every monster you summon basically demands a hand trap, otherwise it's just gonna get you 2 extra bodies from it. You know, it's Spright Blue. If you gotta negate the Spright Blue and you gotta negate the Spright Jet, otherwise they're gonna just get you 2 extra bodies each. But if you do negate them, then they're just gonna make it Gigantic and get what you're gonna summon out anyways. And specifically, this deck also runs the Sprint engine now, which now you can use it. You gotta hit the Sprint as well, otherwise the Sprint is gonna dump Angler, and you're gonna end up with 3 bodies on the field, including a Nimble Mamanga. Imagine losing to Nimble Mamanga in the year of our Lord and Savior 2025. Well, it's gonna happen if you play this deck. Funny, Nimble Beaver is still hilarious enough. This card is still limited. I don't know why. I mean, they put goddamn starter to 3. I don't know why the Nimble Beaver of all cards is still limited here, but I think Swap Frog is still limited as well. But that's neither here nor there. Yeah, formidable end board and tons of non-engine plays through hand traps. That's the idea with Spright. To go over the deck list, we're playing as many copies of the good Spright cards as we can. So right now it's 2 blue, 2 jet. This might go up in the future ban list. We'll see. 3 starter. We're playing the Nimble engine, so we have the Momonga, the Beaver, the Angler, and then also a Foolish Burial as another extender that you can use to pitch Nimble Angler and then summon out Beaver plus Momonga. Obviously, if you draw the Beaver itself, it's also 2 level 2 monsters, so that's also full combo in a sense. And then playing the Dark Beckoning Beast engine, because the Dark Beckoning Beast is actually just the best level 2 starter, since it gets you 2 to 3 bodies. Since you can, with the opening of Tri-Brigade Spright, you can use it to revive Dark Beckoning Beast as well, if you even need the extra body. A lot of times you don't even need the extra body in this deck, because this deck has so many extenders that it produces so many bodies for free. Yeah, you can run more Nightmare Throne as well. Nightmare Throne is really good as well, because it's a card that stays on field, so when you go double Dragon Lord, you can double Dragon Lord says you can send a card from your hand or field to the grave to target the face card your opponent controls, and bounce and return to hand. If you just have random Nightmare Thrones on the field, you can just use double Dragon Lord to sack the Nightmare Thrones, and then you get a free bounce. You don't even have to sack the double Dragon Lord itself. You can just sack a useless card on field that already served its purpose to get a free bounce out of it. So yeah, that's nice. That's neat. Some people run 3 Nightmare Throne for that purpose as well. You can go up to like 44, 45 cards and run more copies of Nightmare Throne as well, because every hand that starts with Dark Beckoning Beast is infinitely better than a hand that doesn't. So yeah, that's an option. The Tri-Brigade engine is 1 Nerval, 1 Kit, 1 Karaz. Like, just the simple idea with this is that you basically gigantic out Kit, or some lines you sprint for Kit. Either way, the Kit, either you link it off or it gets sent by sprint. It'll go to the grave. You're gonna search. You're gonna dump Nerval. Nerval is gonna search Karaz, and then Spright Elf is going to revive the Kit. Kit is gonna make a Farrajeet, and then Farrajeet is gonna summon out the Karaz from hand, and then Karaz is gonna make a double Dragon Lord, and then you're gonna link off the Karaz plus the Farrajeet, or the Kit and the Farrajeet into like a early just to get it off the field. And then you get to cycle another card. You get to draw a card off Farrajeet and put back a non-hand trap, so you can even filter your hand further. And you get a double Dragon Lord and like a Midnight early and an Elf out of all that interaction. And that's like only half your end board. That doesn't even count for the IP as well. So yeah, this engine, as minimal as it is, it does a lot for the deck, and it makes the end boards that much better. And obviously 1 carrot, one red and 1 carrot. That's all you need if you're not playing pure Spright. The 2 opening Spirit Gates, the starter, the Smashers, and the Gamma Burst. You honestly don't even need Gamma Burst to OTK with this deck. A lot of Tri-Brigade Spright builds don't even run the Gamma Burst because it's so easy to OTK, especially if you also run Shadow Mosquito as well. So you don't even have to run this, but this just makes your life easier when you just have to resolve Jet and then Purrely Derp attack with 4 monsters, and that's game, and that it makes it easier in the Maxi and stuff like that. And of course, non-engine, Maxi, Ash, Imperm, Veiler, you're gonna see these cards a lot. Nibiru, it's good against a lot of decks that did well last duels, like Ritual Beast, for example. Obviously, it's not good against Tenpai. And then you have 2 copies of Crow. Crow is very funny because Crow also happens to be a winged beast monster, so this doesn't come up that often because you don't need extra Tri-Beast cards, but it is something that you can pitch with Karaz, just a special Karaz as an extender if you hard draw the Karaz, or if you don't, or if something happens to your Farrajeet for some reason, or you never manage to be able to get the Karaz out of your hand, you can pitch Crows. Crow also, you can use it as Banish Father. If you don't go through your Nimble monsters for some reason, you can still banish Crows from your grave for your Tri-Brigade cards and still get your Tri-Brigade effects that way. So yeah, that's very, very small synergy, does not really come up, but it's something to keep track of. And Asaroon. And extra deck, you have the Link monsters. You need Almirage because you're playing Tri-Brigade, so if you hard open Tri-Brigade like Nerval or Kit, you can link it off into Almirage and get their effects and then combo off that way. IP, Double Dragon Lord, Farrajeet, Elf, 2 Elves, Early, Sprint, SP Little Knight, and Scylla Hat Rabbit. You don't have to play the Scylla Hat Rabbit or the Asaroon. This is optional, but I think it's neat. It's another option you can run. Zeus plus Downer, since if you can just overlay on top of Gigantic, or you can overlay on a Shadow Mosquito. Shadow Mosquito is really easy to make use of because it can't be destroyed by battle, but also facilitates OTKs. And Mannequin Cat is just really nice. You know, you can revive any dark monster, summon out a Spright monster from your deck that way, easy. Or you can even summon out like a red or carrot to protect from to play through your opponent's boards first before committing your plays. But yeah, this is a Tri-Brigade Spright. Prepare to continue seeing this top every single Master Duel Duelist Cup in the future as well. So if you followed what happened in the Duelist Cup, or if you've just been following this format in general, you'll know that Pendulum decks have been tearing it up recently. And yes, that's partly because of this card still being legal. I don't know why it still is. How did this survive a ban list? I mean, what? But another reason why Pendulum decks have been doing so well is because of the release of the Melodious engine, which is some of the best Pendulum support that's ever been released. And one Pendulum deck in particular did very well during the Duelist Cup, which was Drago Slayer. Drago Slayer got 6 top 100 spots, but which I believe is more top 100 slots than even Fire King Snake Eyes, for example. However, this is not Drago Slayer. This is a completely different Pendulum deck. And even if you're not playing, you know, the quote-unquote best Pendulum deck, Pendulum decks as a whole have just gotten a lot better. And Supreme King is just one rogue example of that. And sometimes it honestly just feels like it's impossible to hand trap Pendulum decks with the addition of the Melodious cards. It's like if you don't resolve Max C, it feels like what am I supposed to do? Like what am I supposed to hit? It almost doesn't matter. Like first of all, let's look at the scales of the Melodious Pendulum monsters. Refrain and Couplet, 1 and 9, right? Like that's beautiful. That's literally perfect scales. And what Ostinato does, one Ostinato is full combo and then some. Like you're making multiple Bakas during the line. You're gonna have a Refrain and Couplet in your Pendulum zones. You're gonna have the Bakas themselves are level 7, so you know with 2 of these you can make a Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon and link that up to a Vortex Dragon. So you literally already have an Omni Negate plus perfectly set up scales before you even normal summon. And you probably linked them off into something like a Beyond the Pendulum, when Beyond the Pendulum just gets you full combo from there. So you have like full combo insulation from hand traps without normal summoning, without even using any Supreme King card in your hand. It's absolutely crazy. And like this you can do any Pendulum combo you want in any Pendulum deck off of like a 1 Ostinato, it seems. Like, and you didn't even need to go through Electromite through that. Like, you're gonna go into Electromite later on too. Like, it's your end boards. When people talk about the 5+ negate end boards, like literally can't play, they're talking about Pendulum. Like, Pendulum is the one deck that still does that, where it's not hyperbole to say that this ends on like 5+ negates. And yeah, the Melodious engine is like pretty self-explanatory. I think it's Ostinatos maxing out on Refrain, and then Couplets will, you know, get you the Concerto. The Concerto plus the Ostinato is how you make double Baka. So for your Absolute Dragon. So yeah, that's the Melodious engine, and then for the Supreme engine, you have 3 Gate Magician. You have 2 Dark Worm still, plus the Foolish plus Dragon Shrine, which, admittedly, this is a bit weird. This is a bit of a conflict because Ostinato requires you to control no monsters, and obviously Dark Worm also requires you to control no monsters to special itself from the grave. So sometimes if you draw Ostinato plus Dragon Shrine, it's like sometimes it conflicts. At the same time, right? Say these cards conflict, right? But you resolve Ostinato. Do you really care? Probably not, right? And yeah, obviously you still have to the whole Supreme King stuff, and then 2 Supreme King Dragonlight. This is the tuner. So with a tuners, you can go into Ignister Prominence. What does Ignister Prominence summon from the deck? It summons Magic Pegasus. What does Magic Pegasus do? It adds this card. Lovely. Yeah. So every Pendulum deck, not only do you have to deal with the 5+ negates on the inboard, you also got to deal with this piece of shit, Floodgate. Yeah, it's nice, huh? Especially when you're in a 10x format where you're made to go first a lot, you being the deck that makes the unbreakable board, you know, there's an advantage to that. And obviously, we have the Astrograph Magician, which is a staple in every Pendulum deck. We have the Donut, which you don't want to draw, but you have to play it. And then 1 Wings of Light. I see most guilds, they only run 1 Wings of Light, so I think this is all you really need. Like, generally, I think this is what you add off of Supreme Supreme King Gate Magician, and then this gets you and your combo from there. And something else you might have noticed is that, again, this is a pendulum deck, and not only is it a pendulum deck, it's a pendulum deck with multiple different pendulum engines in the main deck. This deck still has room to run 12 hand traps. It has 12 hand traps plus the Call by the Grave plus the Call across the Designator in a 40 card deck. You know, previously it was kind of unheard of to be able to fit any amount of non-engine in a pendulum deck at all, and here you have like 12 of room to spare. If you want, you could even up the deck count more just to run more hand traps. I know 12 doesn't seem a lot when you like compare to Tenpai, but like this isn't Tenpai we're talking about. This is a pendulum deck, a pendulum deck now that has 1 card and 2 card combos now, so you don't need to use up your whole hand to just do your basic combo, and that also helps it going second as well. And for the extra deck, so Vortex Dragon plus Absolute should be self-explanatory. 2 Bakas, you need it for the Ostinato combo. Ignister Prominence, you know, the Search Secret Village. Borloth Savage, just a generic negate. Baguska, because your end board sometimes, if you don't open Ostinato or you don't have Vortex Dragon, or sometimes you just have like an IP plus Appaloosa on your end board, right? You can just make a Baguska too, and then it's like, you're floodgated from the game, but my Link monsters that on my end board aren't affected by Baguska. You know, the Ritual Beast Classic, but yeah, this is, in general, this card is against Tenpai, you know, better have Droplet, I guess. So yeah, and you can, even if you get Max Seed, you can make this in like 2 summons, just as an anti-Max Seed measure as well. And 1 Odd Eyes Rebellion and Exceed Dragon. This is, so for Supreme King Gate Magician, you have to send an either a Pendulum Dragon, Exceed Dragon, or Synchro Dragon, or Fusion Dragon from your extra deck to the graveyard, and this is generally the best one because you can summon this, I believe, off of Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon in a pinch. I don't know when you would ever do that, but like it is an option that you can summon, and if this gets summoned, you know, this is removal. This pops like 2 cards, right? So it's there, but in general, this is mostly just going to be a send for your Supreme King Gate Magician. You have Electromite. It's legal in this format. You know, TCG Pendulum players. I'm sorry, I guess. IP, Beyond the Pendulum, SP, Exceed the Pendulum. What's important to note is that Exceed the Pendulum is also a spellcaster, so sometimes if you struggle to have a spellcaster on board, if you like want to link off the Majesty Pegasus, you can. If you really want to keep the Secret Village live, you can just leave the Exceed the Pendulum on the field too, and not link it off into like an Appaloosa if like you don't have enough extenders. And then, you know, it keeps the Secret Village live, so there's that, and then you have Access Code, and yeah, Pendulum, like, man, going second against this deck is let me tell you, it's not fun, bro. It's yeah. So the last rogue deck I'm going to go over is the other Cybers deck. You know, not Math Mech. Everyone knows Math Mech. This is Ad Ignister. Although this deck will absolutely run Math Mech Circular just because it can. Like, why wouldn't you if you can't, right? This is the most broken piece of Cybers support to ever exist. And yeah, what this deck has that Math Mech doesn't is that although you technically have slightly less room for non-engine, you know, you only have room for 13, 14 hand traps, quote-unquote only, but your end board is so much stronger. You have all of your 1-card combos lead you to this insane board. So you have like Achichi is a 1-card combo, Pikari 1-card combo, Math Mech Circular obviously a 1-card combo, you have Small Worlds, you have Silent Minds to search it, I Meet You is a 1-card combo, you have like 15 1-card combos, and your end board is going to be Firewall, and usually a Heat Soul. Mind you, this Heat Soul is after you've thinned your deck out by like 10 plus cards, so you know you're going to draw hand traps off of this. And your Firewall Dragon Singularity is also made with Gachiri, so you know it's we love you know, Ad Ignister. Ad Ignister players might see this deck without towers and wonder what no towers. No, this deck does have a towers. It's just that your towers now also bounces multiple cards. So like all in all, your end board is a double bounce plus 1 to 2 bounces off the firewall, plus 2 monster negates off the firewall dragon dark fluid, plus 2 draws in a deck that runs a ton of non-engine. And yeah, that's most decks just can't even get over the singularity at all, because the singularity is obviously it's made with the Getchirius. So like this alone on the end board solos a lot of decks. But also there's another option where if you really want to give Tenpai the middle finger, you can replace the dark fluid in your extra deck and play a Terahertz instead. And you can even make the Terahertz unaffected by Getchirius. So you literally FTK Tenpai if you really wanted to. If your old normal end board isn't enough with like it's like 4 plus interruptions plus a towers plus, you know, a huge floaty monster, you can also add a floodgate, a Tenpai floodgate onto your end board too, if you really wish. This isn't necessary, but you know, some builds have been playing Terahertz instead. So yeah, that's an option. You just have to add like a brick in your main deck, Dun Mari, to make it worth it, and like use a weapon extra slot in your extra deck. So you probably cut like an Axis Code or something, or some builds cut Link Token, although I probably cut Axis Code instead to fit in a Terahertz package. But yeah, their end board is so much stronger than the Mathmech end board is. It's so much stronger than most Cyber's end boards are. And yeah, this deck's obviously really consistent. It plays through hand traps like nothing. Again, because Mathmech Circular exists, because this card exists, you get to play through hand traps with ease. Sometimes you can even just lead with Circular if you already have something like an Ignister starter. People will burn 1. Sometimes they'll even burn 2 hand traps on your Circular, because you know the only way to prevent Mathmech from getting super factorial is to hand trap Circular twice. You know, 1 on the Circular, 1 on the Allen version, and then it's like, okay, thank you for using 2 hand traps. Anyway, normal summon Achichi. Go full combo from there. Yeah, neat. And I will say that this deck is a bit hard to play, especially playing through hand traps is a bit hard because every line to play through specific hand traps are different. So there is a very good combo guide on YouTube about specifically Mathmech at Ignister, the Master Duel version and I think I linked that combo guide on every video I do about adding Ignister, so I'll link it here in this one too. And yeah, to go over the deck list, so you have 3 Achishi, 3 Pikari. These are your 1-card add Ignister combos. You have Hayari and Baru. These are engine requirements. Notably Baru is the tuner, so this is how you make the Wind Pegasus add Ignister. And then the Hayari, you need this to make Mathmech Circular 1-card combo. You need to run the Hayari. But again, it'll be explained in the combo video if you're so interested. You have the Mathmech engine, Circular, Sigma, plus at least 1 subtraction. Some people run addition as well. You can run addition as just another extender too. But you need to run at least 1 subtraction or addition, and then 1 Sigma. And then you don't run super factorial because your end board you don't even really have room to take advantage of super factorial, and you don't have the extra deck space. You don't need super factorial. Your only Math Circular Search Target is equation. You don't need to run that extra brick because your end board doesn't need it. And Doyan is part of the combo. And then Getchiri, you search this card in like all of your combos, so you always get to make one of your extra deck monsters towers for the turn. And usually it's going to be Singularity if you don't play Terahertz. And yeah, we'll get the Singularity later. But obviously this is a Cyber deck, so you can run Cyan Mining. You can run as many Small Worlds as you want. Most decks don't even run the max copy of Small World because like you don't need to, but like this is just maximum consistency. The I Meet You, it's basically a tutor for any add Ignister monster. So this by itself is also full combo. The only weird thing about this card is that it locks you into Cyber's effects for the rest of the turn, which might be like who cares, but in case you didn't know, Ash Blossom is not a Cyber's monster, so if you lead with I Meet You, it means that you can no longer Ash Blossom Maxi, which is an unfortunate part, downside of this card. That's why this is the card that you only run at 1 as a search target. You don't want to start with this card in Master Duel just because you want your Ashes to be able to Ash Maxi, so you don't want to start with this. But most people don't even know that, and people will just Maxi you early anyways before you get to this cards, in which case then it doesn't matter. Like if you have Maxi against add Ignister, you should definitely wait until until, you know, the Picari searches the Imichu first, and then fire Maxi afterwards, that at least your Maxi can possibly resolve, as opposed to, or has a better chance of resolving. But, yeah. Idol Reborn, this is a Reborn. It's an extender, it helps, it's necessary for some one-card combos that also lets you play through hand traps. You have the Maxi, and obviously you have the Maxi Called by the Grave Crossbow Designator, the Maxi minigame package. And then a lot of hand traps, you know, just whatever, however many hand traps you can fit, just fill it in the rest of your deck with hand traps. Like the average Cyber deck, right? Imperm, Ash, Maxi, Veiler, Crow, yada yada. Of note that another advantage of this deck compared to Math deck is that you don't care about Bistio nearly as much as Math deck. For example, one Bistio completely wrecks Super Factorial, which is like the main disruption in the pure Math deck. One Bistio, you oftentimes you don't even care about a Bistio at all. You can full combo through a Bistio like it's nothing. So, yeah, the extra deck is really tight. By the way, this is like there's almost no flex spots. As I mentioned, if you want to run the Terahertz package, you'd have to cut something like an Access Code, which is like it's rough because you use no joke, you use 13 cards in your extra deck for your full combo. So, yeah, you have Wind Pegasus. Of note, keep in mind the first line of text. This card is a Heavy Storm, by the way, so you can make this going second as a way to clear back row. Obviously, going first is just a combo piece that you put in Grave, but keep in mind it has a real effect. Alan Bershin, double Dark Infant. This searches your island. The common misconception is that if Ignister doesn't have Island, it can't combo. Obviously, Island is important for a lot of combo lines, but this deck, especially because of the Circular, you can actually combo without the need of having an Island. So if your opponent hand traps your Dark Infant, you can still full combo through without even having to field spell a lot of times. So yeah, just like keep that in mind. But yeah, you need two for your combo, one to search the Island, obviously, and then the other one as to trigger your Dark Templar. Blink Decoder, Extender needed in combos. Cyber Split Kid, you need this to search Baruru. You have Splash Mage, G-Gull and Crystal Heart, Transfield, the usual Cyber Slop. Dark Templar at Ignister, the biggest hand trap bait. Like this is like the biggest choke point usually of the deck, because this is a soul charge for 3 monsters. That's why you can bend on your crazy boards because of Dark Templar at Ignister. Heat Soul, Firewall 1, Firewall 2, Firewall 3 plus Access Code. Of note, the important trick with this deck, if you run Access Code, is that you can make Access Code with Gachiri, then you go Chainlink 1 Gachiri, Chainlink 2 Access Code. Your opponent cannot respond to your Access Code talker, obviously, and then it's after resolution of the chain, it's unaffected, so your opponent can no longer target your can no longer do anything to your Access Code because it's now affected by Gachiri. So you can chain bot the Gachiri so that the Gachiri always makes your Access Code unaffected, and then your opponent can't do anything about it. And then you just have an Access Code on the field that's unaffected by everything, and you can just pop your opponent's entire board with this unaffected Access Code. So yeah, that's a neat trick. And of note is that this deck, if you own Math Mech, if you own a Math Mech deck already, this deck is very cheap. You just really need the Dark Templar and then I guess the couple Firewall Dragons. Some Math Mech builds already run the Firewall Dragons, so if you're one of the Math Mech players that run Firewall, this deck literally just costs you 1 single UR to be able to play and then have it at full power. But at most, if you own the Math Mech core already, you only really need 3 URs to build this deck as an alternative option. So, and yeah, this is another deck that you don't really want to go second against, because this deck puts up takes like 5-10 minutes to do an unskippable cutscene combo to end on like usually an unbreakable board as well. But yeah, and this deck obviously sees way less play than actual Math Mech, so that's why I put it as Rogue. You're gonna, for every one Ignister you'll probably see like 4 or 5 different Math Mech opponents. So yeah, let's tilt those numbers more in. Let's switch up those. So yeah, those are some of the Rogue decks that I wanted to cover because everyone's sick and tired of the actual meta decks. Of course, let me know in the comments what other Rogue decks you guys think are good, because I know that this isn't all of the good Rogue decks. There are definitely more that I did not cover. So yeah, thanks for watching.